Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can start our last third panel this day. And probably one of the most important, because it begins from regulation, consumer protection, and data security. So we have a very limited time restraint, so I apologize to my fellow speakers that I will be quite strict in time with them. So everyone will have 15 minutes, and I will be warning when time is getting to the end. And I also made some homeworks, and I asked the AI to picture, to illustrate each topic we will be discussing today. So, and when I ask AI to draw what would be deploying AI in preserving data security and cyber welfare, it came out with the kind of Winnie the Pooh, the hacker. So it somehow correlated to what I had on mind. So it will be really interesting to hear this from Rosalili van Rosli. So welcome on stage is yours.
Thank you. No, I think I'm fine. Right. Good afternoon. This one. All right. Thank you. Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lily. I am from the University of Bradford, United Kingdom. I am so happy to be here. I am honored to be invited to present here today. I have actually had the chance to explore Vilnius. It is an absolutely lovely, yeah, I can go on and on about Vilnius, but yeah. So let's just start. I will be looking at how we deploy artificial intelligence in preserving data security in cyber warfare. So I think we have actually established how important data is, and we also know that the emergence of all of these digital technologies has changed the landscape on how we do things, right? And especially within the context of cyber operations. So when we talk about cyber attacks, we also have to talk about how critical national infrastructure is also affected by cyber attacks. And if one sector has been attacked by any cyber attack like hacking or data leakage, it can actually, cause a domino effect. Other type of sectors can also be affected, and that can also result to total system failure due to data infiltration. So the focus today is looking at how important data is in terms of the context of military operations, not looking at military data per se, but more on how we look at the risk of commercially available data and how it impacts cyber operations within the context of military or cyber warfare. So when we talk about data infiltration and exfiltration, it will be due to the unauthorized access of data. Right. So when we look at cyber threats, it can be complex, it can be destructive, it can be coercive, and it ranges from low level to sophisticated. And I'm sure we are so aware with what has been happening all around the world. And the surge of AI has actually created an era of uncertainty and vulnerability. Something that we can say commercially available can also be a threat because of micro-targeting and also data analytics, for example. So because of all of this uncertainty and vulnerabilities, it is also result to political instability and also power rivalry. I think some of our speakers have actually highlighted some of that on how some states are, racing to actually try and govern the use of this technology, but at the same time, they also want to be the leader and want to control certain things. So that's how power rivalry will come in. So now the nation state's focus is in protecting the critical national infrastructure that, of course, would require cyber protection and also security. So when we talk about warfare, it would include algorithmic dissemination of information, cyber attacks, and also social media manipulation, to name a few. But also there are so many ways that cyber warfare can happen. So when we talk about cyber threats and AI, with the response of the use of these technologies, or the use of AI by non-state actors or what we call terrorists, states are also using AI for securitization of data or to put in more security in terms of protecting the state, right? So we can see how this technology or AI has a duality impact, how it is used by criminals or cyber criminals to commit crime. At the same time, nation states are also using it to up their security. So when they look at, within the context of cyber warfare, AI can improve in reconnaissance, and through social engineering can make threat detection more efficient and effective. And this can be seen through cybersecurity strategies that I'm sure most nation states have in place on how they will respond and react, detect, response, any cyber attacks or the use of AI in combating terrorism or any type of warfare. And nation states have now gone through the era of data securitization. They securitize data, and that is what is the most critical thing that they are thinking now, because it could compromise the nation's political, technological, and military capacity to its citizens. And digitization of all sectors, not only within the context of military, all sectors, education, healthcare. We have looked at how it has been totally digitized, and if any infiltration were to happen, it would destroy critical sectors where they will be able to obtain confidential information and disrupt operations. So moving on to data security and securitization. So data security is an integral part of modern warfare because of the influx of misinformation, which is used within complex digital battles. And securitization of data would include protecting physical and digital data from misuse, unauthorized access, deletion, or modification. And what's interesting is, if we were to look at information which is available at hand, it is more easier for us to put security on it, for example, rather than data that we are stockpiling online or through clouds, for example, because it's more porous. It's more easier to infiltrate for data or digital data, or you can say it, right? So all of this, of course, would impact the disruption of critical services, financial loss, and also privacy issue and confidentiality. So the securitization of digital space, or when we talk about lines and supplies and communication in the battlefield, it brings awareness to risk that is not secured. And this has been evidence to what has been happening in the last 3 or 4 years when we talk about infiltration of supply chains, right? We can actually know information about military database. And it is not top secret security information we're talking about. It can be information about food that is being ordered, maybe medications, all right? So it's not specifically talking about weapons, but we're talking about how they deal with data, which is not securitized, and are they aware of the risks? So, as I've highlighted earlier, digital lines are more porous, it is more vulnerable and easily accessible. And the awareness of the vulnerability of such commercial data and the unregulated purchase of data poses when only it views within the individual sections. So, there can be situation where there can be weaponization through analytics. So, what is ordered by a company with lower security, that can be weaponized. So when data is combined with a weapon system, of course, it creates different levels of destruction. So we can look at what has happened, using simple technologies such as pager. We have seen what happened a few months back on that. So data is a new oil. I'm sure everybody has heard that. Data is a new oil, and this is one idea that I find very interesting. Instead of looking at data as oil, as a commodity, we should look at data as ammunition. So within the context of military, we have to look at whatever data that comes through or which is processed within the military context should be seen as ammunition and not as commodity. And instead of looking at it as some sort of opportunity, we should also look at it as risk and vulnerability. So weaponized data is the new ammunition in the coming era of hyper-personalized warfare. And with a vast amount of data, we know that it improves how AI algorithm works. So it also enables state and non-state adversaries to tailor large-scale digital operations. So we're not only talking about large-scale digital operation, it will also include micro-targeting. Because of all of this commercial data that is available online, through data analytics, a lot can happen, and these data can be weaponized. So when we look at data, I'm sure a lot of countries have also realized that, and recently the UK has also highlighted that they are recognizing data centers as one of the critical national infrastructure that they need to protect in terms of cyber attacks and IT blackout. So these data can be used for wide area targeting and also micro-targeting. So what is I'm trying to say here is that data should be segregated according to the risks, and leaders should be looking more onto the potential risks rather than opportunities. So when we look at the categorization of data, it can be highlighted that actually it is more easier to discuss the resource control of that data than trying to understand the data sets residing within the servers because of the unknown and unclassified vulnerabilities available in vast amount due to the unlimited storage. So we now looking at an era that a lot of companies, a lot of organizations are going through data stockpiling. They're stockpiling data. They feel good when they have so much information. But of course, at the same time, when we talk about data stockpiling, there's so much risk towards it, right? So there should be some sort of new framework that we try to conceptualize and manage the risk of that data within the context of cyber warfare. So the risk of stockpiling of data, of course, we talk about hacking, we talk about breach, we talk about supply chain hacking or data owned by third party. We have all of these data parked inside a cloud. How do we know how the security is it on that cloud? And of course, it is always prone to breach. And I think a few months ago, there are breach on the UK military payroll information, right? It does not have to be something on ammunition, all right? So it can be something as simple as payroll or social media information. So military leaders have the tendency to downplay the risk in commercial data and analytics, because with the stockpiling of data, they can be processed at a future time, they can be weaponized, and it can go through data analytics to go through micro-targeting. So in terms of governing data security, of course, we have always had the Data Protection Act, and we also have the data protection principles, and of course, we have data security, which is in place. And then we have the EU Cyber Resilience Act, which more focus on the cybersecurity requirements for products with digital elements, and of course, not forgetting what we have been talking about for 2 days now, the AI Act. There's also elements of data security under Article 50, and also the EU Cyber Solidarity Act, which is more on how to improve preparedness, detection, response of cybersecurity incidents. So looking at the way forward, looking at how we need to respond to this risk in terms of cyber warfare and data security, of course, as cliche as it sounds, awareness is important. The one that's making this decision should be aware, like I say, rather than looking at these data as the new oil or as a commodity, it should be looked at something that could be weaponized. So looking at the awareness of risks and vulnerabilities of data, avoid stockpiling of data. Of course, it is against data principles anyway about the retention principle and all of that. And the categorization of data, look at the source and identifying the risks. And also, we must also be aware of the duality impact of AI, which leads to the securitization of information. That is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much in being in time, which is really a good sign of using AI in preparation. Next, we will have a very interesting and intriguing presentation of Lyubko Grozdanovsky. And I asked AI to comment what it thinks about need and applicability of causality for fair machine learning. And actually, as I saw from the illustration, it's kind of frustration of causality, because many processing over there. So it will be really interesting to hear what Lyubko will comment on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So I had a PowerPoint, which is... Yeah. Yes, that's the one. That's the one. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. This is, for those of you who were there this morning, this is my second presentation. I did not mean it to be like this, but as you can see from the cover slide, this is a study that was co-authored by myself and two colleagues from Paris who are data scientists and who unfortunately could not come to present this paper or co-present this paper. So I bear the difficult responsibility of doing them justice and doing justice to their research, which is far removed from my legal background and from my legal expertise, although there will be legal elements in this presentation. So for the IT experts in the room, I apologize in advance. I will probably get some of the concepts wrong. But for those of you who listened to my presentation from this morning, this actually kind of ties in nicely with what I was talking about. You know, this morning I was talking about the right to explainability, and here we focused on uncovering causality in cases of discrimination occasioned by AI use. Why causality? And the reason why it ties in nicely with the presentation from this morning, because from the vantage point of evidence, what you want is accuracy of the facts, right? And this was the point that I made this morning. If you argue or prove algorithmic discrimination, you want to get it right. and you not only you want to rely on legal entitlements, procedural rights like explainability in the AI Act, et cetera, but you also want to kind of present a narrative or an argument that will convince a judge of what it is that you're saying. So we chose the concept of causality as relevant for both data scientists and procedural lawyers. Now, as a disclaimer, and I'm sure the lawyers in the room will agree, causality is relevant and important insofar as it allows us to distinguish it from correlation, right? From any positive association between a series of events, right? So I can say that I was discriminated against by an AI because Jupiter happened to go through my second house of whatever, right? I mean, I can correlate the two, but of course, there's no causal link. You know, the movement of heavenly bodies has nothing to do with the workings of artificial intelligence. So in order to understand whether we can relate an AI system to a specific outcome that would be potentially discriminatory, we need this concept of causality. So there are essentially two ways. I'm sorry, again, we are experiencing some, presentation issues, but anyway, bear with me. There are two ways, from a data science perspective, there are two ways of measuring causal relationships, or there are two key approaches. There is the random assignment experiment, which essentially means that we select groups that include participants with similar characteristics so that the groups are equivalent and therefore comparable at the beginning and throughout the study, and then there are observable outcomes. So we rely on indicators, observations, artifacts, and conversations. For fairness issues, so for discrimination, generally what we look at are the observable outcomes, right? So it's very outcome-oriented approach. Now, to illustrate this idea of causality and correlation, my co-authors kind of chose three structures that illustrate somehow that causality is actually not very easy to argue in connection to algorithmic discrimination. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm again talking to the lawyers in this room. I think that again yesterday and this morning I spoke about AI discrimination and what does the system do to kind of discriminate against certain groups of people, but it remains that oftentimes, this morning I was speaking of cases of discrimination that are not blatant. That means that when you look at how the decision was made, you don't immediately see that it was based on a specific bias, right? Or on a specific protected characteristic. A topical example of this was, I'm sure you're familiar with this case, credit scoring case in the United States, where an algorithm was used to assess the credit of loan applicants, and the algorithm based its assessment on the addresses of the applicants. And it turned out that it favored people who lived in neighborhoods that were primarily white, right? So it kind of disregarded applicants that came from ethnically mixed neighborhoods. But you see, the criterion that was used by the algorithm was not race per se. It was the place of residence. It just so happened that the effect was discriminatory. Okay, and this is a kind of an important prelude to the structures or models that I'm going to be talking about today that illustrate how discrimination can be mediated, right? So how discrimination can be not straightforwardly discernible. So the first example is a confounder structure, which means that we took the scenario of discrimination based on political beliefs in the context of recruitment, right? So A would be political beliefs, Y would be outcome of the recruitment. Z is the socioeconomic status. And so the socioeconomic status will impact the outcome of the recruitment, because people who have access to better education, presumably have better skills and are better job applicants. But socioeconomic status can also influence the political beliefs. So for example, people who come from wealthier white backgrounds, let's say, they tend to be more conservative, hypothetically speaking, right? And so in this case, you would end up with employees, workers who have a specific socioeconomic background, they have higher degrees, and it just so happens that the majority of them share the same political beliefs, right? But in this case, the relationship between political beliefs and outcome of recruitment is correlational and not causal, because it is mediated by the socioeconomic status, right? So an employer might look at skills, and the fact that the majority of the employees would share the same political beliefs would be like a side effect of choosing a particular profile of worker. I hope this makes sense. The other one is mediator, the mediator structure. The mediator structure essentially is a scenario where there is a trend in particular individual groups, but the trend disappears when you look at all the groups together. The example that we took is the 1973 admissions rates at Berkeley. 44% of freshmen were male, 34% were female on the level of the university. So on the level of the university, you would say, but of course there is gender discrimination because men, male freshmen are more numerous than female freshmen. However, if you look at on a department level, the ratio was actually more or less the same. It was 50-50. So on a department level, there was no solid grounds to argue gender discrimination, but on a university level, it was fairly measurable and obvious that there was gender discrimination. Here again, the gender discrimination argument or this structure is correlational and not causal, right? Because it is mediated by the presence of men and women on a department level. So arguing a direct path between gender and admissions at Berkeley back in the 70s is not necessarily, it's not going to be like an easy, straightforward argument to make. And finally, there is what we call the collider structure. And here, we again looked at the recruitment scenario, but recruitment scenario with the variables of political beliefs and activism in labor unions. And here the collider, we call it the collider structure because there can be two variables that produce the same effect, basically. So what your political beliefs are and whether or not you get the job may dictate whether or not you will become a member of a labor union, right? So again, in this scenario, an employer might, based on skills or what have you, prefer a specific profile of workers. Those workers may share certain beliefs, and it just so happens they may or may not be active in labor unions, right? But again, these relations, these links are correlational and not causal, In this scenario, you would not be able to argue that the employer was specifically looking for people with specific political beliefs that are also members of labor unions. So the point of these models is that it is causally relating an outcome with a variable association that artificial intelligence systems make is not actually a very easy thing to do, right? And if you recall, I'm going to talk about certain cases that I mentioned this morning also, but this morning when I was talking about discrimination, I said, well, in all of the cases that I cited, there was no proof of discrimination. There was all the actions that were brought based on an argument. There's a risk that there might be a discrimination, but there was no proof. So my fellow data scientists suggest mediation analysis. And as far as I understand it, they sought to measure, quote unquote, the level or the dosage of discrimination of all the potential variable combinations, right? And they represented it through this formula. So you have to look at, the idea is that you have to look at discrimination as a complex and multifactorial problem or issue. And there are cases where the path, as it were, between a variable and an outcome would be direct. For example, an AI system might be trained to prefer white people, and then the causality would be kind of obvious. But there are other scenarios and other, more often than not, I would argue, there are scenarios where the path is indirect. In other words, there are correlations that are not immediately revelatory of the fact that the outcome will be discriminatory. This is the formula that I will dare not interpret because, if you know, you know, not my case, I'm afraid. But what I can talk about is how courts actually approach the evidence of causality. And here I will repeat some of the cases that I kind of mentioned this morning. So the first one is Pickett, again. The second one is Loomis, which I assume is well known by most of the lawyers in this room. And the third one is Everett versus Canada. The Pickett case, just as a reminder, deals with an AI system that was used by police authorities to identify a person who was involved in a public shooting through DNA testing. The person was identified. They arrested that person. The person said the algorithm is wrong. It's inaccurate because it is biased. Similar scenarios were mentioned in Loomis and in Everett. In Everett, the argument was, the issue was access of Native Indians, indigenous populations in Canada to public services. And the argument was that there was a ethnic background bias or discrimination that was performed by an AI system. Pickett is very interesting from an evidence point of view, because what happened in Pickett is that the courts said, okay, well, let's see if indeed there is a bias. Let's see if indeed the defendant is right. Let's reverse engineer the decision. The problem with that was that reverse engineering in this particular case, and by the way, the system was not very sophisticated, okay? But it would have taken 8.5 years to reverse engineer the whole, decisional output. So that means for a court that you cannot prove causality. I mean, the evidence is just not feasible. So what do? The courts referred to general expertise. The courts went on to see what scholarship in general said about the system used. Scholarship in general said the system, generally speaking, is accurate. Generally speaking. So in this case, the court said, well, if generally speaking the system is accurate, I'm going to presume that in my specific case, the system is also accurate, which is open to criticism, right? Because it's not proving, per se, causality. It's presuming that maybe there is or is not a causal link, right? We don't know. Hence, fair trial. What happens to fair trial? And these were criminal proceedings. So the defendant said, yes, I'm going to wrap it up. The defendant said, yes, but if I'm going to prison, I want to be sanctioned based on accurate information. Well, what do you do when you don't have accurate information? You assume things. I have 1 minute, so I'm not going to go through all of these assumptions, but there are certain causal assumptions that can be put into place so that you can kind of plausibly recreate a causal scenario, And so where does that leave us? Well, if we want to represent causality accurately, we would have to look at the data that is used to program the system, and also the criteria that were used to define the ground truth, or to constitute the base knowledge. But there again, remember Pickett, even if you do want to look at the data, looking at the data might take a long time. So this was just kind of an exploration of the fact that causality, as it is a complex issue. But when you, again, throw in artificial intelligence in the mix, it becomes even more complex, because the evidence of causality might not always be feasible. So data scientists as showcased here, have attempted to create causal models that we could use moving forward that can be used even by courts, but it remains to be seen how all of this will be put into practice. So I will stop there. I hope I didn't go over my time limit that much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a perfect time management. Thank you. And actually, I think that to some extent, the AI-generated picture about causality and frustration was correct. Now let's move to another very interesting topic, which is artificial intelligence in defense. Again, it probably was one of the easiest tasks for the AI to put armed robots with the beach in the background. So, but I think it's not an easy task to Paulus to explain everything to us. So, floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. Thank you. Yes, the topic is not so easy. Let's run through the issues. That's very shortly about me. Why I'd like to stress, because I work with UNESCO, and that is not UNESCO topic. War, defense is not UNESCO topic. So that's a bit different. But when we're talking with these big organizations, OECD and UNESCO, they always say that we have what to say. And that's very important to hear these organizations in all areas of activities. So let's go further. So there is a question: do we need this regulation at all in defense? And we will see what is happening. And is it an international agreement possible? So we will discuss this. And the main topic is: do we trust our armies, our soldiers, our governments, how they use, and do we think that it's a good idea to have AI in defense? And we're not so naive. We know that all armies are using, all smart weapons, guns are based on AI. So we just can hide our heads, but in principle, it's used. So that's the fact. So I have just some illustrative slides. When we talk about countries, there was really good research done. I quite often use it. So we can see that positive perception of AI is more concentrated in Asia, or let's say in BRIC countries. So it's China, Brazil, India, South Africa. Happily, Russia is not in this list, but and yeah. So that means that our countries are more conservative. So we think that there are more risks, or we don't like to employ it. So that's that's where it is used. You can see the same countries. It's China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and European countries are quite low in this list. So that means that there is some mistrust. That's not about defense. So it's in general, and that's like more social issue. So it was a question. That's not a fact in general. Okay. What's happening here in Lithuania? So we have really high trust to our army. So it looks like not so bad. So 80%, it's really good. And when we talk about trust in AI, so it's hard to gain and easy to lose. And that's true, because as we discussed several times, when we see a bad example, we are stressed. Okay, so it's happening something wrong. And it's quite difficult to say when AI is good. So just a few researches. So 45, here it is in the United States, 45 of US public expressed trust in use. Here I'm talking about defense, in national defense. So it's quite high trust. But anyway, 35 were unclear and 20 did not agree. When we talk about military people, so 60% of respondents have moderate to high confidence to AI usage in military technologies, but 40% of those remain skeptical, talking about ethical and reliability issues and so on. What is important to stress that depend on where it is used. For example, is it for drones? Is it for some more important activities? Because defense is quite wide definition. It's not just military. It's, as it was a very good example, it could be salaries of soldiers. Okay, so it's big. It's in infrastructure and so on and so on. So it's quite wide. Medicine in military, it could be a defense topic too. So that's very important to point that it's not just about war and not just about military. And there is some trust that it can increase efficiency and so on and so on. So it's quite positive, but there are some concerns here. Okay, so here in Europe, we're happy, maybe not, but we have some legal act, good legal act, I hope, because nobody knows. We will see in some time period. And I pointed some things what I hope you know. It's not developed by AI Act. It's a high-level experts group. Some principles, ethical principles, and let's just run through because I think you know. But then I will compare what is possible to use in defense. Okay, so human agency and oversight. It was repeated in a lot of presentations. Technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance. I will point this topic about privacy, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination, social and environmental well-being, and accountability. Okay, so it's quite clear principles. Okay, so what is said in this act, we know. Yeah, so there is exclusion for military and national defense. So it's not applicable, and that's quite clear because it's due to EU, let's say, internal legal policies. Because yeah, so let's talk about international conventions or treaties. As you know, there was started. Convention, Vilnius Convention, maybe it will be called the Vilnius Convention. And there were quite strong players here, including United States, UK, whole EU, other countries. There's there were 9 who signed, but as you know, there are intentions for much more countries to sign. Good, so perfect. It is a softer version of AI Act. It's much softer version, let's say, in this way. It's because it was a compromise, for United States or for UK to sign the same AI Act. It could be, a disaster, but anyway. And here it is. Here we can see the fundamental principles: human dignity, individual autonomy, equality and non-discrimination, respect of privacy, transparency, accountability, reliability, safe innovation. Maybe safe innovation is something a bit different to principles what we discussed before, but most of them are repeating, okay, in one or another form. And what's about the AI Convention? National defense and all military issues are excluded too. Okay, so what we have that for civil society, not military, not defense, we have some specific principles, okay? So that's good. Let's go to these legal acts or self-regulatory acts, what are dedicated to defense. Okay, so there are several in some countries, but they are not international and they are not, let's say, binding. They're more self-regulation. Okay. So NATO strategy, 6 principles. So it was 7, now it's 6. Okay, good. Lawfulness, responsibility, accountability, nothing new. So it's something in line with these principles. Explainability, it's very important. It was a very good presentation on this topic. Reliability, very important for military purposes, for defense purposes. Governability, okay, it could be new. Bias mitigation, we can find some space in these civil principles too. So we can't see anything new here. Maybe we do not have something what is related to data protection, privacy. Okay, so it's a very, very civil, very non-military issue, but all principles are quite okay. Okay, so one more very big event. It was Responsible AI in Military Domain Summit. It was in Seoul. It was just 1 month ago. There were more than 60 countries, including United States. Russia was not invited. But that's a very tricky topic. Is it good to do not invite when we agree on some limitations? Okay, maybe it's good to agree, but you must be sure that everybody will, just keep promise. And what we can see that 30 countries, that's half, including China, sent government representatives, but they didn't accept it, the project. So we will go, what is the project? So it was very tough. There were very difficult discussions. There were just ideas. Maybe we can agree that there will be some regional agreements, some for specific regions. And that's nonsense in principle. So how you can agree that, for example, for Asia, there are principles specific and they are different to others. Because when we talk about defense, we need to agree on the same principles to be on the same page. We can't just have different, that's like about any weapon, okay? Any military or defense topic. And here it is, quite a small shrift, but the text, you can see that what are main principles. So ethical and human-centric, it's very wide. What is ethics? We can go because there are different understanding of ethics and human centricity at the same time. Because there are some countries who are really human-centric in defense, but not all of them. And what's happening when you are in war, for example, Ukraine is not very human-centric here because they have a problem, they need to solve this problem, okay? So then you can't just be human-centric, you look at other principles, how to do it in most efficient way. B is most interesting for me, that applied in accordance with applicable national and international laws, and we do not have such laws, both national and international, so that means nothing, okay? Human, that human centricity is human remain responsible and accountable. The reliability and trustworthiness of AI, and appropriate human involvement. And adequate understanding, explaining that personnel should be responsible and need to understand, explain that was presented, that we need to avoid black boxes and autonomous decision making by AI. So we can see that these principles are quite close to these what we discuss in other laws and regulations and maybe drafts of the documents. So we're not so far from let's say, other activities, not defense. And I hope that there will be possibility to agree. Maybe it's a long way to agree on it, but it is a possibility. What else? It was agreed that to encourage the development of effective legal review procedures, trust, confidence building measures, and so on. So there were a lot of abstract agreements, just to involve as many countries as possible. to be on the same page. And that was a bit, for me, it was a bit tricky because here I can see in diplomatical way it is said that it will be very soft agreement anyway. So you can recognize the need for flexible, balanced and realistic approach to the governance of AI in the military domain. So we can't agree on very strict rules. And it will be quite interesting when we have stricter rules, or more clear rules in civil society, in our ordinary life, but softer regulations in military domain. It could be quite strange. So that was my message, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Paulius, for this very interesting and also tough topic. And actually, we are quite good on time, so thank you for that as well. Sorry for the annoying messages, but it's a good time management. And now we will have Benediktas Girdvainis, who will tell us about implementing the EU AI Act in Lithuania. And he will speak about challenges and strategies for compliance with ethical, regulatory, and safety requirements. So maybe, again, these challenges reflected in this picture generated by AI. So Benedikta, floor is yours.
I look quite similar, no? In the build and everything to the picture. So that's quite fitting, I think. Okay, I'll try to make it as short as possible. Putting on a timer as well, being very, very professional. The slides, though. We need to have the slides up. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for bearing with us and staying for so long still. I hope to make this as entertaining in a good way, not a comic way, but like a concrete and concise representation of what I've done in the past 6 months. So thank you, everybody, and thanks, Neringa, for inviting me here, and also inviting me here to speak on these things that I hold very dear to my heart, but also for helping me out the last 6 months in the project that I had, which I'll speak on about shortly. Yeah, I'll also talk about the challenges and then the strategies, the opportunities that we have, and how we make use of those opportunities for compliance with ethical, regulatory, and safety requirements of the AI Act. So I'm not a scholar, as most of the people today were, so I won't be as specific probably for you. I'm more of a policy-making person. And yeah, I've completed a master's in comparative criminal justice in LIDA just last year, and then straight away I just moved to the program of Create Lithuania, where I was delegated the past 6 months to the Economy and Innovation Ministry of the Republic of Lithuania. And yeah, enough about me probably. Let's talk about the contextual shifts of the world. We had, I mean, we all know by now probably, because it was 2 days of pretty much information about the AI Act or just concerning something around the AI Act. So I won't bore you about it anymore. You just have to know that it's in force already and that the different obligations are coming into force gradually in the future. The next thing, which is no less important in my opinion, is the increase in the capabilities and the uptake of GPI systems. So this is more of a legal term, an umbrella term that most of you may not know. So it's kind of, if you can think of generative AI, and that's something that I know all of you would understand and know about. So that's that, also LLMs. All of these fall under the categorization of the GPI systems, which are really, really complex in comparison to those narrow use systems. And they require, once again, more rigid supervision. we come to the challenges of implementing the AI Act and just overcoming, well, the risks that come together with the GPAI intake and the new capabilities of it. So the first one that we found out together with the rest of the experts, I'm going to speak about that organization that we created together in the past half of a year, just a bit later. But the first challenge that we came up with is information gaps. So the ecosystem just lacks information about what is happening in policy making in Lithuania, especially in terms of AI. And that's one thing that I've noticed right from the start. It was like, I can tell you a short story. I was at the AI meetup, which we have today as well. So that's a shout out to them, AI Association. If you wish, you can also join today in the evening. I think it starts at 7. But last year we had pretty much the same thing, and also the deputy minister, who is also speaking today about pretty much the same thing that I'm speaking about right now, has also talked about what was going to happen just 1 year ago. And not a lot was thought about in terms of AI governance in Lithuania back then. And I'm just really, really glad that we had the opportunity to change that altogether. And one of those things was filling those information gaps. Also, we have the financial burden. So it's said now that compliance with AI Act for companies might cost up to around 300,000 for a company of 50 people, which is a lot of money, you know. And those AI Act principles, they're kind of universal. We all understand them. We're all Europeans, you know. It's not that difficult. But the problem is that we have to comply with them and show that we complied with them. And that's a financial burden, nonetheless. We also have AI illiteracy, which is kind of a premise that we're speaking about only slightly, because the principle and the obligation to fulfill this principle is going to only come into force next year, the start of next year, as 6 months after the whole act comes into force. But not a lot is being done in this kind of area at the moment, and that's why I always just stress that in my presentations, that we already have to think of how we're going to fill this illiteracy gaps and become more literate. Also, we have the institutional limitations in our government. So we don't have unlimited resources, unlimited people. We have to make use of what we have right now. And that's a big challenge. And I hope it was somewhat fixed at the moment with how we set up the whole framework. And the ecosystem has also said that there's a risk that we have these havens in Europe where part of the companies, they don't comply, and then the state or the government institutions which are supposed to supervise them do not supervise them sufficiently, and then that country just becomes a haven for people who are basically just intentionally misusing AI. And that could be a big problem, but I think we kind of fix that as well, or are in the process of fixing it. And also there's a risk of overly strict regulation, which is not as big of a risk, I think, because as I mentioned, these principles, I think we all would universally agree to most of them in the AI Act. And we also have the strategic opportunities that come with the AI Act. So we have the risk, we have the challenges, but we can learn about our own ecosystem, learn what strengths we have, and just find the strategic opportunities for ourselves. So the one thing that was mentioned is the high readiness for AI development in the public sector. We are in the 35th, I think, place in the publication, the yearly publication of Oxford Insights for the government's AI readiness index. That's pretty good, but we have to make use of that somehow, right? And we do have several new programs that are being rolled out pretty much every year. So like the GovTech program, like the AI sandbox of the Innovation Agency, things like that. But are those enough? We'll see, right? Also, we have pretty strong cybersecurity, legal, and data protection expertise. That's also in the universities as well as in legal firms and etc. So we have to make use of that, and we can make use of that in the way that I'm going to present a bit later. Also, we have somewhat good public to private communication. So the government, we're living in a small country, let's be honest. Like everybody knows each other pretty much, or like everybody is 3 people to basically the president. And it's still possible for everybody to just go to the government and just say, okay, I have this pitch, I want to basically explain this idea, things like that, or I have some commentaries on issues about the processes of the government, etc. So we can make use of that, right? And we have a really good potential in high-risk AI in Lithuania. So our fintech sector is pretty much booming at the moment. The medtech, we have a lot of good companies at the moment already, little startups becoming like bigger companies and just scaling up. And we're trying to invest a lot in dual-use AI, which is also really, really respectable. And I think in our geopolitical position, it's necessary at the same time. We have to make use of that as well. And we also have to think about the strategic gaps that other countries have. So these strengths are somewhat already related to that. So we have a small country, we have this geopolitical situation, we have these sectors that are already booming at the moment. We have to support them. And the other countries, like you probably know about Meta and how they decided not to roll out Llama in Europe because of the uncertainty of the legal position of the market surveillance and other authorities and the legislation itself. And that's going to be a big problem, I think, for a lot of companies. They're not going to risk going into high-risk AI per se or things like that, and they're just going to kind of shy away. And we can come in there and do our thing and put us under the sun as well. A little country who can also at the same time become a leader in some little field, you know, specialize in something. And that's how we came up with the national AI governance model. So basically the first tenet of it is that we are supposed to have a specialized capacity development for the development and deployment of high-risk AI systems and products, which fall under the annexes of 1 and 3 of the AI Act. We should have the leadership in their facilitation. That means that our regulation system, our conformity assessment systems, our education systems, as well as the organizational governance model should be up to par to kind of support this idea that, okay, we have this very special area that we are focusing in, but we have to also facilitate that nothing bad happens at the same time, you know, because it's also high risk. I think it only makes sense. And one other thing, which is not related to that, but you can see at the top, it's about development. So developing AI systems. The second step is about their facilitation. And the third one is about the use of GPAI, which is really, really important to us because we just had a study made by, I forgot the name of the consultancy firm, but basically it says that Lithuania can increase its gross domestic product by 5% in 10 years if we increase the intake of GPAI up to some extent, which is going to be enough. So we have to still focus on that either way. And the national AI governance model is supported by strategic guidelines, which have these 6 aspects of cooperation, regulation, conformity, innovation support, and organizational AI governance models, as well as aims for all of these 6, the tasks that we have to fulfill, the indexes that could be used for the test runs, etc. And this is basically for the government, for the institutions who could just kind of use this as inspiration on how to fulfill the facilitation of the model. Okay, and I'm going to use AI governance for quite a few times in the future now, in the future of the presentation, so I'll just have to explain it to you really shortly. I believe that it's the frameworks and processes of supervision of AI in development, deployment, and use. But it's supervision, I'm not speaking only about the legal supervision. It's also about just perceiving how well it works and what could be fixed, how can we make the most of it, what are the maximum benefits in the situation, and how do we kind of mitigate the risks and the detriments of using AI or deploying it or developing it. And for this as well, we had the AI Governance Forum in Lithuania, which joined together 200 experts. And I'm really glad to say that some people who are kind of joining us for the sessions monthly are already here as well. So it's always nice to see familiar faces. For the future, it's also pretty nice transition because it's going to be part of Vilnius University program. I mean, not a scholar program, but just like their processes as well. So we'll join hands together with Vilnius University in the future of AI Governance Forum. And this is, I think, pretty much the most important slide. So if you want, you can take a picture. While I take a drink, it's basically the scheme for the supranational/national level AI governance. So we have all of these institutions who are responsible for various things. It's made by Novelli et al., but at the same time, I just kind of tweaked it a little bit to fit our own situation, as well as some minor changes which were happening after the release of the AI Act, such as the GPAI providers. A lot of countries still think that the member states are not going to have to supervise the GPAI models. But as soon as they become high-risk models, they become the responsibility of the market surveillance authorities locally. And this is one thing I'm going to mention later as well. And I'm already really glad to see the faces of the people who are going to be responsible for that in Lithuania. It means that they care, so I think we're in good hands, right? You can give them a little clap if you want. Yes. So as you can see, these two authorities, the notifying authority and the market surveillance authority, I mean, the coordinating one were already designated. I mean, it's not legal yet. It has to pass the parliament at the moment, I think, right? And the member for the AI board from Lithuania is already designated. It's the deputy minister of economy and innovation, which we'll see what changes in the future after the elections. But at the moment, we kind of have everything, most of it done, which is much better, I think, than the rest of Europe, because, I mean, yeah, we have the Netherlands who are leading this supervising AI by competent authorities working group. But the rest, I think, since we have this small country, we have this access, it's much easier for us to decide on these things. Although there are some problems, but it's not as bad as it is in probably France or like Sweden, where you have to talk to everybody pretty much and get everybody on the same page. So that's why we're kind of leading in this at the moment. And the rest of the things that are in motion for the fulfillment of the AI governance model and basically the AI Act are just the basics. So we have to do these two things, designate the competent authorities for supervision of the AI Act, which is already, as I said, almost done. There are still some things to do and some functions to decide on and etc. But I think we're doing pretty okay in this. And we have to either create or join in AI regulatory sandbox. And this is already being designed by the Innovation Agency, and it has been since the start of the year, I believe, or maybe even before then. And as you can see, the deadline is still far ahead. So I think we'll have a really good one. And it's also nice that we're not joining some other country, or we're just making it our own, and then we can have the regulatory learning for the market surveillance authority as well at the same time, so they can join the sandbox and just see what may be going wrong for the companies and etc. I think it's going to be really good for Lithuania to have our own sandbox. And we're going the extra mile as well. So the first thing, as I mentioned, we have this TSI application. So it's a technical support instrument for supervising GPAI. It's already being made by the Communication Regulatory Authority and the Dutch Authority for Digital Infrastructure. So we're leading this, but all of us are going to share the benefits in Europe. I mean, if it goes through, hopefully. And then we have the Supervising AI by Competent Authorities Working Group. Next meeting is held in Vilnius, I think next week, something like that, end of October. And then we have the call for conformity assessment firms establishment and platform, because that also helps facilitate. If we have these companies already in Lithuania, we're not losing a lot of money, because as I said, it might take up to 300,000 euros. Why just give that money to some other country? We can just reuse it from the taxes to basically support the ecosystem of AI. And then we have the AI Governance Forum. As I said, it will continue operating under the help of Vilnius University. And we also have this interactive national AI governance platform, a dashboard, but it's not yet fully running yet. We'll have a chatbot, so it's a nice gimmick, you know. It's going to be published on the website of the ministry. Okay, and I won't speak about the ethics because I'm running out of time, I think. So therefore, I'll just... Yeah? Okay, I see. So yeah, basically, I can send you the slides and you can just take a look about the guidelines, other recommendations that I have for you. And if you have any ideas or questions, you can keep in touch with me through my LinkedIn or through my AI twin. So if I don't have time to answer to you, just ask my twin. I think he's more competent than I am. So I even consulted myself sometimes.
It is your AI-generated profile.
It's kind of it's a chatbot, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It uses a lot of my information, so.
Cool.
It already took my job.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Benedicte, so much. And it is sometimes challenging to keep on time, and actually the final presentation today about with the very intriguing name, the Ministry of Digital Affairs of Poland, ethical aspects. AI Act does the AI Act address the problem? And actually, for this topic, the AI generated to me probably the most sensitive picture, which is self-explanatory, I believe. So, and I really very welcome Anna Wyszecka, sorry for my mistake, to address this very interesting topic. Thank you. I think if we have our IT guy, it would be really helpful to find the presentation. Thank you so much.
Because I sent this on email.
It's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Still, maybe. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Wyszecka. Thank you very much that you are staying so late. And I will like to discuss a little bit maybe lighter aspects about ethical aspects which are mentioned in AI Act. And when we are searching information about ethical aspects in the AI Act in the 27 motif, we already see that is the recommendation for all the stakeholders on academia, on industry, for society, civil society, to prepare the ethical principles for the development of voluntary best practices and standards. I want to underline the word voluntary best practices and standards because it's very important for the final conclusion. Next, if we look at the motive 8, we also see that if we talk about research aspect, we also see the recommendation for the recognize and manage with ethical standards for the scientific research, which is I think good to underline if we are on the scientific conference. And moving to the article second in AI Act, we see that there is the statement that AI Act does not apply to the AI system or AI models which are using for the scientific research. So here, if we want to talk about ethical aspects in making research, it's good to go to the European Research Charter, where we see that when we can read that if we want to provide some research, scientific research, we should, of course, provide it by the fundamental principles of ethical, where, where we can find in various documents on the national and sectoral level. But it's a funny story because if we talk about ethical aspects in making research, we go for exactly to the institution where we are doing our research. So if we want to be fulfill all the requirements, first we go to our university where we are preparing the research and ask them, okay, what I must fulfill, what requirements I must fulfill to be to get a point that I am compliance with ethical aspects that are required on universities. So we don't have some general principles directly which are talking about different kind of research. What was already mentioned, if we talk about ethical aspects, of course, AI Act refers to the two documents. One was already mentioned. It's, of course, guidelines for trustworthy AI. And I will not refer to the principles that was mentioned already, but I want to underline that even in AI Act, it was underlined that the 7 principles that are mentioned in the trustworthy guidelines are not binding. So, the second document which AI refers to is European Parliament resolution, where we have also some frameworks about ethical aspects. And what is the most important, in my opinion, in this document is that there is mention about European certification of the ethical compliance. So, what else, if we, of course, go to the Article 5 of this resolution, we also see that any artificial intelligence or any new technology systems which we want to use should be fulfill all the law requirements and also be provide in full respect of human rights, fundamental rights, human autonomy, and also be safety for human lives. But what is interesting in the guideline for trustworthy AI, they are talking only about development and use of AI systems. Here in the resolution, we have underlined that we are talking about development, deployment, and use. So here we fulfill some small gaps. And what else, which is very important in the sentence that was also mentioned about in previous presentation, that data is oil for the AI systems. In the resolution, it was also mentioned that we don't talking only about the systems that should be using in ethical way. We also talking about the data that are used and produced by the systems. So very interesting thing. What about privacy, which also is here connected with the ethical aspects? Resolution directly reference to the GDPR regulation and also to 2058 EC directive. And also mention about the research project which are provided by the union or member states, and also is underlined here that it should promote, when we are providing the such as a project, we should promote social inclusion, democracy, equality, and so on. So still we are focused on the ethical aspects. But here is also, I want to underline that we're talking about promotion. So we don't talking about some bounding requirements. We only say, okay, we want to be ethical right, but it's not like we have some law requirements. Back to the AI Act, if we talk about AI systems, of course, we see that if we want to testing AI system with high risk, we of course should taking into consideration also ethical aspects. But still, it's the recommendation, not like we should like law aspects. What else in Article 95, which is very interesting, that AI Office, which was starting running in this year on the EU level, we have the recommendation that the AI Office should prepare the code of conduct, including for example, ethical aspects. So in the reference, of course, to the guidelines for trustworthy AI. That was what about in AI's Act we have already. And there's two documents that AI Act refers to. But if we look at the, for example, OECD documents which are treated about ethical aspects, we can see that the five of the principles are covered the same as was mentioned, are covered the aspects that were mentioned in the two documents which AI Act refers to. So, but if we talk about UNESCO, for example, principles which are prepared and they are talking about, we see that, for example, two different differences. For example, if we talk about proportionally and do not harm, in UNESCO documents, we see that they are talking about and underline to use appropriate method of AI systems. That do not harm, of course, for the fundamental rights and don't harm the ethical aspects, but also they are mentioned about awareness and literacy, where here they are covered the information that we should cooperate on the government level, of the academia, of the industry, of the media, of the all of the level where we can meet with AI problems and AI use and AI development and deployment. We should together working for the best use of AI and preparing the principles of ethical use of AI systems. What else? They are also mentioned about open standards and the accessible education about how the AI system works, because at the end it's not the regulation. We must understand also the regulation, how they work, and also we must understand how the AI system works to know what, for example, negative aspects of using them could harm our rights at the end. Also, I want to go to the conclusions, because if we talk about, for example, scientific research, of course, every university has their own regulation, have their own requirements at the end. But for example, on Koźmiński University, we're starting a discussion about, okay, how to grade the final assignments for students who use the AI systems for preparing those assessments. But AI system can use on the universities in many different ways. So we should thinking about all the life cycles of AI and all the different possibility of using AI on the university systems. In my opinion, when I look on some regulation on different universities, for example, in Poland, we don't cover all these aspects. We starting the discussion at the end. So how to grade the students, but we don't discussion how to provide the research with using AI that will be ethical, fulfill all ethical aspects and requirements. So here we should starting working at this, especially in the context of the ethical certification, which was mentioned in the resolution, because there it wasn't mentioned before by me, but this certification is not only connected with high-risk AI systems. It should be also implemented for AI systems in general. So I hope that this certification procedure will be provided by the AI office, but also we should also take into consideration the sectoral aspects, because in banking, in for example medicine, there should be different, for example, and more deeper consideration about ethical aspects than in the, for example, marketing aspects. Here, thank you very much for the attention, and if you have any questions or so, please contact me.
So
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you all for your active involvement. And now it's the perfect time for the questions. I see many hands with many questions. So actually, I have a huge honor and privilege to make a closing statements to this amazing conference, which unfortunately to all of us came to an end. And actually we explored human-centered AI-related challenges presented by fellow scholars, practitioners. Even the student program was active during this time. And the probably rhetorical question would be, did we solve all the problems? And I would like to, again, to refer to a joke generated by AI, which says, why was the math book sad? Because it had too many problems. So I think it is a good chance not to solve these all problems, but have an annual must-to-attend event, which should continue growing and attracting many other scholars, practitioners, and everyone who is actively involved into this very demanding topic. And of course, this event would not have been possible without devotion of, first of all, Neringa, Christina, and all the conference organizing committee. So thank you guys. This is amazing what you've done. So I think that you are quite exhausted, so I'm rather short on this closing remarks. So thank you again, all of you, to being here, to visiting these facilities, to exploring Vilnius, and hope to see you in next future. Thank you.